Hello and welcome to Altenew's February release Video Hop. Since it's a video hop, do like, share, subscribe and hop along to enter the fabulous giveaway. Now in my video today, I'm sharing a fun inlaid technique of die cutting using the Craft of Flower sunflower die. So what I have done is I am following the composition given in the packaging guide, and I have picked out petal number 1 from the triangle keyhole system, petal number 1 from the arrow system, and the stem that goes along. I will be using burnt red for my card base. So I have cut it to an A2 panel that's 4¼ by 5½ inches. Now I am roughly creating a composition here on my card, and why I'm doing that is so I know where I'm die cutting and I have everything right within this card base. So nothing should really be outside of it, because if it comes out, then it's just going to die cut instead of stay within for the inlaid die cut technique that I have in mind. Now this is really eyeballing. I am just following along and working on creating that image that gives me one bloom in the front and that bloom which seems to face the sun behind. Keeping that in mind, I am just placing my elements. Once I'm happy, I am going to first die cut the uppermost layer, the first petal. Now once I have die cut that, I am going to place the stem layer. Now I messed up a little bit here. One tip, make sure that the bottom end of the stem is within the paper, right? That is something that's very important. And here I'm just going to show you how I'm placing the plates offset a little bit so that it doesn't cut through the entire part of the die. I don't need that center part. So once that's die cut here, you will see what I was talking about. It still stays within the frame of the card. Now onto that next bloom, I am placing that right there at the bottom, and I run that through the die cut machine to have that cut out as well. Now you'll understand more about where I messed up once I start inlaying the pieces, but I show you how I fix that as well. So no worries when it comes to that. Now I have another piece of the same cardstock, but 1/8 inch shorter from all sides, and I am applying glue all around my first card base where I have cut in the shapes, the sunflowers, basically the outline, and I glue that onto that other piece of cardstock, which, like I mentioned, is 1/8 inch smaller from all the sides. What this does is it gives me the same color base and it helps for that inlaid die cutting technique. I do go back in the front, making sure that the entire panel is nicely adhered down wherever I have to, because for a technique like this, we want a smooth background and it's almost like a puzzle that we've created for ourselves. Now I'm using sun-kissed, grass-field and pink sand cardstock to die cut the remaining pieces. So the petal pieces for both the sunflowers, the bigger petal pieces, I'm die cutting those on sun-kissed. Then the bloom that's at the bottom, the triangle one has flower centers, which I am die cutting on pink sand. And then the bloom that's at the back has green foliage layers along with the leaves. And then the stem, I'm cutting all of that on grass field. So once I die cut all of these elements, I just place it on my 9x12 sticky mat, and I'm going to add a little ink blending detail over this. Since it's colored cardstock, it really makes it easy. So I'm going in with milk chocolate on the topmost layers of the flower center, and then choco hazelnut for the base layer of the same flower center. That way, over pink sand, which was a very light kind of beige tone, I was able to very easily ink with the browns, and it gives me a nice flower center for my sunflower. On the sunflower petals itself, I first go in with mid yellow, just tinting it a little bit, creating a little shading between the sun-kissed from the cardstock and then the mid yellow that I'm inking with. I go in with lemonade stand as well, mostly center out, darkening it. And for just the base petals, I go in with autumn blaze to give it a warmer orange yellow touch, differentiating between the two layers of the petals. So that way I have some nice ink blending and shading going on, giving these sunflowers a realistic look. Now, once that's done, for the leaves, the foliage elements, I'm using evergreen and I'm just creating a distinction, darkening some of the pieces, so having a dark layer and a light layer, and on the leaves, just darkening the base, adding a little detail with the ink blending using evergreen. I've used mini blending brushes for the entire ink blending process. Now, once that's done, all we have to do is like a puzzle, just fit all the pieces in together. So I start with the top arrow system. I apply glue at the back of the keyhole itself, but I go and apply glue within that piece right there so that my petals lay flat and nicely rest within that cardstock. I just use a regular scoring tool to nicely burnish and make sure everything is adhered well. So that way I have just put that piece back in, and the first layer of my card and the stem is just flushed right in and is equivalent to the base of the card. So it's just a very different technique, and I simply follow the keyhole system, layer petals over one another, and the other layers basically bring in the dimension. Now, after I've adhered this is where I was telling you I realized I messed up. Now, when I wanted to go back in and stick the stem, I realized that it was not in position as per the keyhole system. So I just removed the last piece I stuck, glue it behind the piece on the stem. I fit the stem inside from the bottom and then just folded over and adhered it in place on the flower, and no one can really tell that I've done something like that. It still looks like a part of the flower, and I just had to fold in slightly to get everything fit inside. I'm repeating the same process with the next bloom, putting the pieces in, just adhering nicely. And I think this is a nice different technique, a little different way of using the craft of flower and having the base layer flushed within the layer of the cardstock. Just another technique to inspire you all. Now here again, my flower center seemed like it was facing downwards. So I do go back and change that. And my leaves here are more upward. I glue them with liquid glue again, just tucking them underneath the sunflowers, anchoring the flowers and creating a little composition. Now, this is what I was talking about. I've just removed and made sure the flower center is pointing upwards. I bring out my stamp wheel, place the card onto the stamp wheel, and I'm using Lenten Grace stamp set for my sentiment. Now, I've picked a longer sentiment here, and I'm going to show you how I am going to split it up. So I use some satin masking tape, ink part of it with obsidian ink, stamp that, clean off my stamp, place the satin mask, first place the stamp, the remaining part where I want underneath. Then again use the satin masking tape to mask the remaining part, ink it up with obsidian ink and stamp that part underneath. So one big sentiment, like a statement, has been split into two lines, and I anchor that with another huge sentiment from the same set. I think it just adds so much more meaning to this card. To finish it off and to bring that warm glow that this card needs, I go in with gold splatter from my metallic pan set. With that, this card comes to an end, and I really hope that this technique has inspired you to use your dies in a slightly different manner. I do teach monthly classes as a certified Altenew educator. do check my website and check the description box for all the details below. Until the next time, take care and bye-bye.